Counselor Hunter,
Here.
Counselor Nunnally,
Here.
Counselor Carlson, Counselor Gabrielle, Counselor Graham,
Here.
Counselor Dowd,
Here.
Counselor Dahlman,
Here.
Counselor Fisher,
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Dahlman, can you lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A little different to do that without the Zoom echo.
Right?
I know.
That made it much easier.
Oh, we'll just get the owl out here. We have our agenda in front of us this evening. I'll look to council for approval.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. One item on the consent agenda this evening, which are the council minutes from the November 6th and November 13th meetings. A motion on the consent agenda. Mr. Nunnally?
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented. Sorry.
Second.
Second. That was you, Mr. Fisher. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We do not have a committee report this evening. So at this point, I'm going to open the meeting for public comment. Ask any individual from the public to step forward and state your public comment to the council on items that are not on the agenda this evening. Anyone online? Nope. Okay. Close our public comment. Unless, sir, you want to give public comment on an item that's not on the agenda. Okay. We're going to move on to the first action item this evening, ordinance 1915. This is the second reading for the Riverside North Silverbrook Planned Unit Development. This item considers an amended PUD overlay for 97 lots on 80.97 acres at 250 Church Drive. Mr. Russell?
For the staff report, we'll be taking a look at the local high school basketball. This is the second reading of ordinance. Normally, our second readings are on consent agenda, and we don't do a staff report. But that's when it's unanimous. This was a 7-2 vote, so it's on the action item. Again, got the display. We're happy to delve into any of the items council wants, but typically staff report related to it because we did it and had that discussion last week. But we are happy to answer any questions council may have or go over any of the different items within that respective action item.
Any questions for staff? Unanswered from the last time. Any public comment on ordinance 1915, the second reading for Riverside North Silverbrook Planned Unit Development? Seeing none, look to council for a motion. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move ordinance number 1915, an ordinance authorizing and adopting an amendment to the Silverbrook Estates Plan Unit Development enacted by ordinance number 1597 and amended by ordinance numbers 1785 and 1813.
Second.
Second, I have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I won't repeat what I said at the last meeting regarding this, but I'll just refer for the record to those comments as to why I'm voting no on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunter.
I guess I'll do the same.
Refer to 2 weeks ago. All right, any other comments? Can I have a roll call vote?
Counselor Hunter,
No.
Counselor Nunnally,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman,
No.
Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion carries. Next item is Resolution 6172, Northland Subdivision Phase 5 Preliminary Plat Extension. This resolution considers extending the plat for this subdivision located along the western boundary of Northland Drive for an additional 2 years. Mr. Russell?
Mayor and Council, and I'll turn it over to our senior planner, PJ Sorensen, to deliver the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mayor Council. This is a request by Bridgeland Development LLP to extend the preliminary plat for Northland Subdivision Phase 5 for 2 years. As far as location, it's just a little bit south of 4 Mile Drive and just to the east of the bypass. The phase, actually, they've completed several of the phases. Started off as phase 5, but there's a phase 5 A, B, C, and D. They've finished those first 3, and you can see in this aerial some of the homes that have been built in there. 5D is this northern part right up here that they haven't done a final plat on yet. This area just to the west is owned by MDT. If you remember earlier this year, we did Pioneer Estates down by Greenbrier. It's a similar situation where there was land that was purchased by MDT but wasn't used, and they will probably be developing it at some point, and that's kind of relevant to what we're going to be talking about here in just a second. The preliminary plat was approved June 5th, 2017. Condition 2 of the preliminary plat states that the plat shall be valid for a period of 3 years from date of approval, which is in accord with the Kalispell subdivision regulations. The original expiration date for the plat was thus June 5th, 2020. An extension in 2020 was granted, and 2 final plats in 2020 and 2021 extended the expiration date to December 20th, 2023. The subdivision regulations provide for a second 2-year extension request, and the applicant has provided a letter requesting a plat extension. This shows the plat. Again, it's just this northern area here that we're looking at right now, again with MDT property off to the west. The letter from the applicant stated that the primary reason for the request is ongoing discussions with MDT regarding the adjoining property to the west and how it might connect to this property. Initial plans allowed for some earthwork to extend onto the MDT property. It does not appear that that would be an option at this point. So an extension would allow additional time to determine the site design to reflect this issue and would serve the public interest by creating interconnectivity between this development and potential future development on the MDT property. It does not appear to adversely affect any adjoining properties. Therefore, staff would recommend that council approve the extension request for an additional 2 years, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Any public comment on Resolution 6172? Motion? Mr. Dowd?
Your Honor, I move resolution number 6172, a resolution approving a 2-year extension to the preliminary plat of Northland Subdivision Phase 5 located at the western boundary of Northland Drive in Section 1, Township 28 North, Range 22 West, Flathead County, Montana.
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Carlson. Any discussion on the motion? A roll call vote.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion carries. Next item is Resolution 6173, Emergency Responder Dedicated Levy Ballot. This resolution considers a mail-in election on March 19, 2024 for a dedicated emergency responder levy that would provide funding for staffing and equipment for law enforcement and fire and emergency medical services. Mr. Russell, presentation.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, as you're well aware, we've had numerous meetings related to establishing CPSM reports for a third-party review going back to fiscal year 23 budget and the carryover to the discussions of the review of those reports, the recommendations within them, the funding components. We held a work session talking about the different parameters related to state taxes and how that impacts our funding and how that correlates with the recommendations and the needs for the different level of services that were identified in both of those reports. Through that, at the last work session we held, it was directed to move forward. We presented multiple options. Council ultimately landed on going forward with the recommendations as identified within the various CPSM reports. Basically looking at it, we didn't want to go out, be successful, and then go out again and just make it look like that continual one and rather have it all out there initially. So council did provide direction on that. Very briefly, I'll talk about council did appropriate funds for third-party public education campaign. Identified last week that we did not receive any responses related to that. We did meet today as a group and talked about the desire to continue to move forward, taking that on internally, and we'll talk more about that and some ways of involvement during the manager's report, or if there's questions during this one specifically related to that, I'm happy to answer them. But in respect to the levy going forward, we'd all kind of decided to move forward with that respective date of March 19th as a mail-only ballot. And some of the idea behind that is to make sure it gets on everyone's mailbox. They have that opportunity and they actively make a choice to engage in the voting process or not to. That's an important concept of it as it relates to a special election in this component. So with that, the recommendation before you is to approve the ballot language. Just briefly, we're looking at a little over $4.6 million. Basically, we're looking at the funding of 11 law enforcement responders and 27 responders within the fire and EMS, and that includes the standing up the third station. One of the things that did emerge in our discussions today, and ask for a really a friendly amendment to this. Actually, I don't know if that's protocol. I'll defer to Councilman Dowd on that. But as you'll notice in the for and against, it talks about 11 or funding its law enforcement with 11 additional employees, and its fire and EMS department with its station and 27 employees. Probably should say additional, so no one gets into the respect of, no wait, I funded for this to fund it only at 27 employees. Sometimes word matters, and so we'd ask for that just change, that we add additional employees where it references that. That way we can put it directly in the ballot language. Like I say, with that, we've had a lot of discussions related to this, and so happy to bring this forward with the recommendation and happy to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Graham?
I thank Your Honor. Doug, the difference between the second option and the third option, if I remember, was that the third option has the fire station as a part of that, right?
Correct. So what you're looking at,
The additional employees, are they the same across between the two options? It's just
no. So when you add that third station in, you basically have that, and basically the first aspect of, so you have an additional 15 responders.
Yeah, okay.
12 to stand up the response units, and then 3 additional shift commanders
Okay.
to really manage now 3 stations. You'll have a specific commander being able to manage that directly. So you're adding in 15 additional personnel with the addition of that station. A good question came up was, well, how does that work out then when the station's built? Well, what it does is you build the station with the funding for those 15 employees, and then once the station's built, then you hire the employees to staff it. So it's all in. It doesn't need to be adjusted as it goes on. But yeah, that third option includes the station and those additional 15 responders.
If this is if this is year after year after year, once the station is built, does the mill, does it go down?
No, so you're levying essentially for 15 employees.
Okay.
You're not levying for funding for the station.
Okay.
But you'll build the station with that funding for the 15 employees.
Got
So
it.
you're generating about 1.6 million for 15 employees.
Okay.
So you use that 1.6 million every year to build the station,
Okay.
finance it out, however we want to do it. But you'd have that bedrock in because then once you get that station built, then the money starts going to the employees. Because obviously you have to have the station built before you fill it with employees to go forward with it. So, and it's a good question. It's one that we actually kind of wrestled around until I was looking at other municipalities, and that's identified in how Bozeman did it back in like 2007. And well, that just makes perfect sense. So.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Nunley?
Okay, I'm gonna go down a squirrel trail potentially. I'm sure that we've already checked with the elections department. They would be using the updated maps for this election. potentially?
Luckily, this is a citywide, so it is not dependent upon boards for
Sure,
this election. So
Sure. okay, yeah. I think that's where I was trying to figure that out, so.
yep, not ward dependent.
What about annexation areas?
They should all be in there. And I don't think annexations were an issue of the current one. I think they're all in there according to the previous. Again, I don't work for the elections office. Just a hunch that they're,
I saw
we'll
the
have
map
thing up to date.
looked at the map recently. It looked up to date as far as annexations.
Even they reported the annexations were all in.
Any other questions?
I guess one other question would be is that the increasing on this ballot would be towards just the property itself, not necessarily the use on the property. Like with the property value itself is what it would be based off of, right?
Yeah, it's an ad valorem.
Right. I guess where I'm saying is if the piece of property goes to and has, you know, an eightplex on it, it goes just for the piece of property. It's not going to go. Whoever owns the property may split it between the units that increase, but it doesn't go to each tenant as far as.
The property tax bill goes to the property owner.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Now, different uses have different classifications.
Right. Yeah.
But it'd be based on that assessed value of
Right.
each respective property.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Any public comment on resolution 6173? Nope. See no public comment, look to council for a motion. Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to approve Resolution 6173, a resolution calling for a special election on March 19th, 2024 by mail for a ballot measure that submits to the electors of the city of Kalispell a new mill levy to provide funding for law enforcement and fire emergency medical services and providing for notice of election, all as authorized by Section 1510-425 of the Montana Code Annotated.
Second.
Second. Was that you, Mr. Dowd?
Roger that.
We better give that one to Mr.
I,
Dowd.
I am all for bringing this to the people.
Man, this is awesome. Mr. Dowd seconding a tax increase. No, you're right. Seconding, bringing it to the taxpayers, to the people. So that motion second, any discussion on the motion? Mr. Graham?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, to kind of dovetail off of that, you know, that statement, taking it to the voters, I can get behind that. You know, when we had this work session, I was really juggling in my mind the second option, the third option. I was kind of getting caught up, you know, in the second aspect of it as to, you know, what's feasible, what's going to go through and pass. And I think the thing is that, like you said, Mayor, is that this is us going to the residents of Kalispell and just saying, look, this is it. Nuts and bolts, this is it. This is what we need as a city. And I think we've always done that. You know, we've always gone through and made those hard decisions. To me, this is a hard decision because of what the potential is. It's not a hard decision to go and say it needs to go, you know, to the people for them to vote on. But this isn't, for a lot of people, this isn't small money when it goes through and looks at, you know, a monthly budget. And, you know, say for me, I hope that people understand that, you know, at least for me, that doesn't get lost in my vote on this. It's purely about not kicking the can down the road, because people don't like that either. And it's about laying it out there in front of the voters to make a decision on, and letting the process work its way through. So I'll be supporting it.
Other discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I was also one who expressed some concern about which option we went with, and that decision's been made. I continue to have some concerns about that, but ultimately, I'm hearing from folks in the community that they want our police and fire to be staffed up, and I do too. And so this will be the test for them of whether or not, just how much they want that, right? And that's why we're putting them before the voters. I think we're all in agreement. We need to be fully staffed up, and it's up to the voters to decide how badly they want that. So I will be supporting it as well. And also, just to mention, I did receive a voicemail today in support of putting it on the levy from Chris DeBorn. So for the record, wanted to mention that as intended as public comment. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Mr. Fisher?
In agreeing with Mr. Graham and Mr. Hunter, I've personally needed these folks in the last 2 weeks for my mother. Response time was incredible. Crew was incredible. I think people want that in their community. They want to know whether it's their young child or their elderly mother, a traffic accident. I think people will speak. We're putting this in the right spot to let people speak up, and this is exactly what should be happening. So I will be supporting this 100%.
Mr. Dowd?
I have a little bit different angle on it. I'm really happy that we get opportunities like this to reach out and get the voice of the people behind what they want to happen. So they have to juggle the cost to them personally versus the improvement to the community. And so I'm all for this going out to the people, but I did have a couple questions that I might have to redirect back to staff that I just thought of. So for our discussion on this, part of the facilities that we would be creating with the new fire station would be covered by fire impact fees. I'm trying to figure out if that lowers the budget allocation for that specific year underneath what the levy brings in. What happens to the excess for that? Does it roll over for the same project, or does it just go in a general fund? How does that work?
So it's not necessarily a given that we'd use impact fees, because we could also use impact fees for the additional ladder truck
Correct.
that was required in there. So, if we're looking at a situation where we are moving forward, I would say build the fire station out of these proceeds and use the engine, or use the impact fees for that engine, because it has a lifespan over 10 years. And then we're already outfitting that at the same time, because it's probably at a 2-year build as well from out. So yeah, there's not necessarily a benefit one way or the other, because then you just swap where those uses could be done in there. So basically we'd be looking at the funding of whatever equipment we have, and then those additional employees. If you're looking at a situation, maybe you have a scenario where valuation doubles, and so we have a dedicated levy, not a dedicated dollar amount. So this would be one of those occasions where you'd be, looking at up to that mill levy, and you could potentially lower it if the circumstances warrant, to create enough funding for what it's designed to put forward to. But that, would be dependent upon that respective year's levy and what the valuation is.
Great. That's a great answer. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All of us, I
ahead.
think, are going to raise our hands.
Yeah,
so-
we're all going to raise hands. So I'll go with you, Ms. Dahlman. And then we'll just...
Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't have any vacillation on 2 or 3. I wanted 3 because safe staffing saves lives, so I'll be supporting this 100%.
Thank you, Ms. Dahlman. Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. Basically, everyone has said here, I do not lose sight of a couple of public comments I received today via phone from some folks that are on fixed incomes, and that this could be a challenge for them. And I wholeheartedly see that as I have family that lives in town that's on a fixed income. But I also see that we need these services and we need to push forward, which is why I was proud to be able to make that motion, so.
Thank you, Mr. Nunley. Ms. Carlson.
Last but not least,
Oh, I haven't
everything,
gone yet.
everything everyone has said, I totally agree with and support. We've had lots of public comments, with concerns over safety, in Kalispell, and this totally addresses those concerns. So I am all for it for number 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson. As I said last time, I was in support of the first option because I think taking it to the people is, this is one of those rare instances where we get to talk about level of service. And this is one of those specific cases where we need to go to the public to ask for more, and where they can have a direct voice in, do we want this or not? And I think if you step back and think about it, and this isn't fear-mongering, I've had someone make that comment, but when you call 911 and you want these guys to show up, you want them there right now. And when you're in times of a crisis, 3 minutes seems like a lifetime. So I think it's important that we look at proper staffing for proper response times. But I also want to step back because we also kind of waited a little bit. When do we do this? Because we had a big fear because our governor actually was on the radio talking and telling the people that cities and counties were the ones raising your taxes. They were the ones hurting you, the taxpayer. And I'd like to dispel some of that. I've run tax numbers for my whole life, well, since college. But I have a 7-year history on my own personal residence. And granted, each residence is individual and there's differences. But what I look at is what am I paying in taxes and what am I getting for the dollars that I pay? And back in 2017, my city portion of my real estate taxes were $1,852. 2018, it was $1,856. 2019, $1,781. 2020, $1,760. 2021, $1,671. 2022, it went up $1,722. And this year it was $1,741. I went from paying 0.35% of the assessed market value to 0.25%. So as a council, we've been very careful with the taxpayer dollars. We don't levy everything we can. We're careful with the budget. So contrary to what everybody was worried about, and to the credit of the commissioners for limiting the mills that we had that went to the state for education, because that's truly where the increase was going to come this year, was because the legislature didn't act on the education portion of the tax bills. Fortunately, our commissioners backed off on that, and everybody's tax bills weren't as bad as many had feared when we saw those assessments with the prior year mill rate come out. We talked about that multiple times. So I sensed the tone of relief from a number of people that I talked to when they got their tax bill. So I think now we can step back with some clarity, and especially what I want to do, if the council's open to this, is looking at your individual residences. I can prepare the same type of data, give it to you to approve, but I'd like to have this available for the public so they understand what we pay. We pay these taxes. And understand that we're trying to get the best dollar, the best bang for the buck when we do these things. But I think that kind of transparency helps dispel a lot of the misinformation that's put out, one, by state law with the notices that go out, and two, when you have senior elected officials just plain out lying to the people in Flathead County, especially in Kalispell. I take exception to that, especially when they don't know what they're talking about. So if council members are happy, I'm put that together for you, let you look at it, and if you approve, ask Mr. Russell to have those available for the public. I think it's just another element of transparency that we can have. Back to this, I'm going to be supporting this 100%. I'm I'm gonna be helping Mr. Russell and staff with videos, whatever we need to do to get the information out. I ask and I implore the council, let's do the, if you can do the same and join me with doing videos, doing information. We just need to get the information out, the facts out, and as we said, we don't have money allocated to professionals to do this, so we're gonna have to do it ourselves in a homegrown manner, all within state law. But anyway, I'm gonna be supporting this and look forward to seeing the voters in March, see what their voice says. So, anything else?
If I get an amendment,
Yeah, amendment.
There we go.
Were you
Yep.
looking for one?
Yeah.
yep, just add, where it doesn't say additional employees to
In the
have it say.
whereas, add 27 additional employees. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make an amendment to add the word additional after the number 27 and before employees on the 6th whereas.
Second.
Just end wherever is necessary,
and
because
wherever is
it's multiple
necessary.
spots.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Roll call vote on the amendment?
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye, motion carries. Back to the original motion as amended. Any other discussion? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
Aye.
Counselor Carlson,
Aye.
Counselor Graham,
Aye.
Counselor Dowd,
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Fisher,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion carries. City manager report.
Yeah, Mayor and Council. First one, I'll just kind of follow up on, as we talked about the public education component. As we identified and looked at some of the benefits of going out with a third-party contractor, which we're all supportive of and want to do it. We did not receive any proposals. That does create some other advantages in terms of some additional liquidity for things like mailers. If you're looking at 15,000 plus or minus to do a mailer out, we may have been looking at one. Now we're potentially looking at potentially 3 mailers going out just to get that information out forward. Mayor Johnson talked about videos. It was about, 6 or 7 years ago where all the department heads did about a 1-minute video explaining their department, things that we did. It actually received a lot of good feedback out in the community. So that's one of the things we're talking about, is putting together a whole library of those with our responders. And like I say, an opportunity, if council wants to participate in that, we'd love to get some of that as well. Have our responders participate, potentially members of the council, and don't want to put anyone into something that they're uncomfortable doing. So I may reach out later in terms, but if anyone's interested in participating in some of that, just let me know. But we're going to start meeting weekly to start talking about some of that messaging component and get those materials prepared, get an outline of the communications plan. That way, when we get out to that 60 and 90 month, we're really able to narrow in and focus all the efforts and get that timing down and get that information out. Because as I said before, again, we want the community to be educated, and we want to get it in front of them and have them aware of it. And we think between direct mailers, videos going out, that obviously you're going to get shared and shared and shared through social media aspects. Then also face-to-face presentations, probably some town halls. Again, that probably include council members as part of that. And just being able to really get out there, already looking at, a dedicated landing page on a website to go over all the information with the frequently asked questions. So when we're out and we're using that time on the mailer, we can hit things briefly and then redirect if we need to the FAQ page, or even blast out individual frequently asked questions out on the social media, just to continue to get some of those things in place. One of the things we talked about this morning when we met was the whole property tax issue. And it's an important one to address because it's going to come up in questions, and we think it'd be good, like in any of our presentations, have lost the slide on, a slide or two on the property taxes, but really don't want to get lost in the services that are being provided as part of this levy. You don't want to be able to address it, but really want to focus the time and attention on what services we provide and how that is a benefit and what the report says and what some of those areas in need are. So looking at just kind of that whole comprehensive component going forward, but definitely will be a pretty busy 4 months ahead of us in all those areas. So like I said, looking forward on getting started with that and moving in that direction. The only other item, I mentioned last week that we're looking at a work session next week for a solid waste business plan, which is part of our budget as well. First, we have to coordinate with people coming in, with our consultant to arrive or to be able to be prepared, and has requested a delay on that. So that was the item that was scheduled for next Monday night, and that fell through today. So looking at not having a work session next week, so potentially enjoy the Thanksgiving weekend with that little extra on Monday night. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Anything from council? Mr. Dowd, you had big news. I mean, once in a lifetime first ever, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, congratulations to the new president of Argentina.
That's right. Don't cry for me anymore, Argentina.
But unfortunately, that's what I wasn't gonna, that's not what I was gonna bring up. You know, we have to be very careful on council when we're presenting this levy next year, that we are providing information and not providing our opinion whether that should be a yes or a no, right? I think we have great information to put out. I don't think there's a lot of the public that knows what that information is yet. There's been some stuff in the paper, but I don't think that it reflects exactly what this issue is. You know, growth is supposed to pay for this. But when growth happens, you shut down your economy and it hasn't recovered. Your supply chain hasn't recovered. Prices of things go up, and and inflation is just soaring. With all those things together, unfortunately, our growth did not pay for this. It should have. If everything would have gone as planned, as we plan every year, and we knew that, you know, things were going to get a little bit more expensive, but nobody could have identified this. So I just want to let the voters know why this is happening. It's not unique to Kalispell. There are levies going out, to my knowledge, in at least 6 of the big 7 in Montana about the same issue. So we are not unique here. It has nothing to do with our planning. It has everything to do with today's environment. So I just wanted to bring that up and throw that out there, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Anything else from council? Mr. Fisher?
Pass. Well said.
I guess I have 2 things. I guess first of all, just want to, just give a little bit of an update what we did this last week. Ms. Dahlman, Ms. Carlson, and Doug and I, we were in Atlanta for National League of Cities and Towns, and it's always interesting going and doing that. Very interesting. I have a different way that I look at these types of meetings that I go to. I go there with an open mind. Most oftentimes, though, I go and I look at, you know, who's giving the presentation, what's it about, what problems are they experiencing, and I kind of go through and look at it as, you know, whether or not I'm kind of looking at it like, well, maybe I don't want to do what you've been doing because it doesn't appear to be working. I kind of look at it as maybe peeking behind the curtain a little bit on certain things that these cities have been doing that aren't necessarily effective. I mean, I wouldn't want to go through and double on something if it's not effective. So good sessions that we went to, good mobile work sessions, great mobile work sessions that we went to. And another thing about it that I think is probably even better than all of that is being able to get with your other council members in a smaller group and be able to talk about this stuff that we're seeing and hearing and bounce things off of each other. So it was a total success. I'm not sure how much I really like Atlanta, but I'll tell you what, you know, the thing is that also realized is, you know, when you're here, we talk about the problems and issues that we have here in the little town of Kalispell. And when you go to a place like Atlanta or any of these other larger cities, we've got it really good. We talk about, you know, some of the issues that we have, but man, I'll take those any day compared to some of that other stuff. So, anyhow, I wanted to thank you guys for going and having a, you know, good productive time with you. The other thing is, I'm sure that you guys have seen the email that we got this morning from Miss Carlene Core. She had also actually called me after that to mention something to me that she forgot to put in there, and we were talking, and I asked her to send me some pictures that were descriptive of what she was talking to me about. So I finally got those forwarded off to the rest of the council. But I was wondering, Mr. Russell, what your thoughts are on what we heard from Ms. Core.
Yeah, we didn't have an abundant amount of time to go over it today, but John and I did speak this afternoon, and it certainly seems like, just like any other event of that nature, it'd be looking at requiring a vendors and special event permit. That they couldn't do that activity, but to have it permitted under, you know, our processes and operations. So, like I say, that's initial blush is that it certainly seems like it's just something that needs to be permitted, and
Okay.
not that they couldn't do it, but just has to follow the same process that we do for our special events and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Ms. Carlson? Going, gone? Okay, couple quick things. Mr. Dowd, you kind of touched on it, inflation. Just so everybody's aware, this is as of right now, looking back since January 1, 2020, average consumer is seeing a 23.5% increase in prices. So over this period of time, prices have gone up 25%, which basically means you've lost purchasing power. Which, directly to your point, it costs a lot more to do things within the city than it did anywhere else. That said, the other thing that I found interesting looking at statistics, I kept saying that, you know, this doesn't last. These prices don't keep going like this, and you don't keep seeing the boom, and pretty soon things revert back to the mean. And with these high interest rates, we're now starting to see it was 95 of the 97 major metropolitan markets across the U.S. It is now cheaper to rent than to buy. And when we had mortgage rates at 2.5% to 3%, it was cheaper to buy than to rent. We're starting to see a lot more inventory, I think, across the country. The report I read this morning showed 900,000 units are still to come onto the market before the end of 2024. And I think we have a lot of that here in Kalispell as well. What the analysts are now starting to say is there's going to be a lot of developers that lose a lot of money. So is it as bad as 08, 09? I don't know. We've been there. We've seen these things. History doesn't repeat, but it sometimes rhymes. So I think as we watch, and you know, as I kept saying, the best cure for high prices is high prices, because someone's going to build to meet the need, and then they're going to overbuild. And I just have a sense that that's what we're moving into. So fingers crossed we start to see rent prices taper down to where people can afford it, which makes things a lot easier with the housing on the housing front in our community. But because of that, we're also seeing a lot less inbound migration than what we saw over the last couple of years too. So, and then I will, you know, Mr. Dowd, I will speak to it. I'm not a libertarian, but anytime I see socialism get defeated by some other form and I see more freedom, hopefully coming to a country, fingers crossed, what we're actually seeing, I think, is pretty important historically to keep an eye on what happens in Argentina. Has nothing to do with us here in Kalispell, but it's just one of those interesting side notes. We're living in very interesting times, so don't get caught up in it and let it wear you down. appreciate history in the moment that you're living, because our great grandkids will read the history books about what's happened over the last 10 years and go, wow, our parents survived that and our grandparents survived that. And then I only have two other requests. One, I had a letter from a student in Lynchburg, Virginia, that when we're done with the meeting, if I could get the council in front, I need to get a picture of a flat Stanley with the council. I have to build, it sounds like a book now to send to this class. But a student named Ellis who wants to know more about Montana and sent me a flat Stanley that I now get to cart around with me for the next couple weeks to take pictures and send. So I'm going to do that for Ellis and get that. And then the last thing is I want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. It's an important time with family and friends. And I think it's important, you know, after 10 years in this council, I've spent a lot of time away from my family. We spent a lot of time together. Of sorts, we've become a family. And I appreciate every one of you, appreciate everyone on staff. We don't necessarily always agree, but most families don't either. And I just want to let you guys know I appreciate, guys and gals, sorry.
Thank you.
I appreciate every one of you, and I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And with that, we're adjourned.